right, hello everyone and welcome. We're going to give people just a few minutes to get tuned in and settled, and then we will get everything underway. Let's see, while we are waiting, I would like to remind everyone that today's presentation will be recorded, and that recording will be made available on the RSULibraries Facebook page with RSULibraries YouTube page with closed captioning. We welcome you to revisit the presentation yourself and to share it with your friends, family, classmates, colleagues, anyone really that you feel could benefit from learning more about this important topic. All right, I know people are still tuning in, but I think we are about ready to get going. So thank you so much for joining us for today's discussion on human trafficking. Throughout today's event, we invite you to share your comments and questions. Please locate the comments area on your screen. And if you think of a question for the speaker at any point, just go ahead and type it there. I'll be monitoring the chat for questions, and I will either pose it to her at the time or hold it for the discussion portion at the end of the event. So without any further delay, our presenter today is Danielle Sisk. Danielle is an international consultant and speaker. While she calls the Oklahoma and Arkansas area home, her work and passions for social justice have allowed for her to adventure throughout the United States and the world, raising awareness about social justice issues and anti-trafficking work. She has 18 years of experience working with global movements, anti-trafficking initiatives, college and career planning, international healthcare, and branding, social justice issues, international education, legislation in DC, work to address slavery in the 21st century, as well as hands-on in the field work are just some of the experiences that fuel her portfolio. She loves sharing with people about the simple strategies we can all implement to bring about good change and how to position ourselves to make a difference. Danielle believes we all have the ability to lead and an opportunity to play a role in affecting change. At this time, I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Danielle.
Hey, thank you, Caitlin, so much. You did that so well. I was like, oh, we're just going to hang here with you and just, yeah, thank you. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come hang out and for us to talk about human trafficking and anti-trafficking. I know that a lot of times when we hear the word human trafficking, it can feel like a very big, broad term. So I love that there are opportunities like what RSU is providing today for us to come together to talk about things that affect us, not just locally, but globally, and to kind of dip our toe a little bit into what can feel like a very big and heavy topic and kind of funnel it down a little bit to see what role do we play? How can we be helpful in combating trafficking, and how can we be aware and help others become aware and educated about this topic? So thank you guys for being here today. I know for me, years ago, I didn't see myself going into a profession that would lead me into a line of work to work in a global movement or to help combat trafficking, or to work in anything that really dealt with combating even slavery. And it was actually my time during college that I really was like, okay, what can I do? What do I want to do? And college provided so many opportunities for me to meet different people and have conversations that ended up shaping my career path. So first of all, I just want to say, enjoy your time, enjoy these classes, definitely connect with professors and faculty that are there on your campus or in this season that you have access to in Zoom or whatever digital platform, because you just never know where your career can lead you and what places it can take you and how you can change the world. So thanks for making time to hang out today, and I'm excited for all that's going to happen. So human trafficking, again, oftentimes such a word that can feel like it encompasses so many things. We hear human trafficking, we hear modern day slavery, then you hear really big numbers thrown around like 40 million people are in slavery today, more at this point in our history than ever before. And it just feels like that is such a big number. One, is it true? 2, how do we find that information out? And 3, if it's that big, can we really do anything? And the answer to all of those is yes, we can do something. There are things in place right now that allow us to track that kind of statistic or that kind of information to the best of our ability. And then right now we are going to talk about what human trafficking is. So I'm going to share my screen with you and hopefully do this very successfully. Give me just a second here. All right. So you should see coming up my Google Doc. What is human trafficking? So there are a few things highlighted here. The easiest way is that top definition right there. First of all, human trafficking is a crime. So a lot of times when we hear the word trafficking, about 20 years ago, you would hear more in the news, and trafficking was used more readily than when we talked about the trafficking of illegal firearms or illegal drugs. Nowadays, we hear that word trafficking associated a lot with human trafficking. So human trafficking is a crime. It is illegal. And here in just a little bit, we're going to talk about what that looks like and how that plays out globally. Here in our country, in the US, human trafficking is a crime. It is illegal. So what is human trafficking? Human trafficking is a crime that involves exploiting a person for labor services or commercial sex or services that they are being forced to do against their will. I think sometimes when we talk human trafficking, people automatically think exploiting an individual for commercial sex or sexual exploitation. It's important to know that human trafficking, there are two things when someone says human trafficking, it's for sexual exploitation or it is labor purposes. So that is one of the biggest things to keep in mind. I know a lot of times when I have conversations with individuals, they automatically go, oh, someone has been trafficked, it's sexual exploitation. And that is a part of human trafficking, but also so is forced labor. And so a lot of times that forced labor piece gets overlooked, but it's super important just to know whenever you hear anybody talking human trafficking, or you want to bring the topic up of human trafficking in a conversation, the two ways that we define in our country human trafficking, that it is a crime and someone can be forced to do something against their will in human trafficking, it's labor purposes or sexual exploitation. I also want to just draw your guys' attention, and let me just double check. Caitlin, are we still seeing the Google Doc? Is this okay? Great. Just wanted to double check. I just flipped between screens, and so wanted to make sure. I would also like to just point out there, right below that definition, you're going to see an A, and it says sex trafficking in which a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age. So again, when we talk human trafficking, I know that sometimes as human trafficking becomes something we talk about more and we're educated about more, you'll sometimes hear individuals say, well, they're above 18, so it must no longer be against their will. Just to be clear that when we talk human trafficking, while some of our laws do put an age on certain things, anytime someone is forced against their will by what was just listed in point A, that it is illegal to force anyone against their will, and that is human trafficking. And so again, so many layers can go into this, but I just wanted to point out first off, as we get started, what a clear definition of human trafficking is. And so we're going to pop down to point B real quick, which says the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, debt bondage, or slavery. So again, I know that these definitions can be huge, but I just wanted to make sure as we get started that these are things that we understand what is the basics of human trafficking, and these are pulled directly from our Department of Justice definition for our country. So this is how we as the US define human trafficking and what that looks like. Again, can be a big term, but as the more we talk about it, the more we understand what it is and how it plays out, the more we can all not only be educated, but help educate others. So right now, I know those definitions can be really big, and Caitlin mentioned throwing up questions over in the chat for later. So even as we take a look at those definitions, if there's any questions that just come to your mind just already looking at those definitions, like go ahead, toss that in the chat, and we will definitely get to them here in just a little bit. So as we talk again, human trafficking, there are things that we've defined it, there are layers that happen. And so a lot of the next question I usually get is, who is a target? What does that even look like? How does someone get trafficked? And so a lot of times what you're going to find, especially here in our country, is one, first of all, social media has actually changed how individuals are being targeted. So I would say before we had a huge social media presence, you would see a lot of times that a person or a trafficker or someone who is targeting individuals to traffic, they would look for those that were in maybe really bad home situations, low income situations, individuals who found themselves in very desperate kind of living situations. Those were some of the easiest people to target. Now with social media presence, social media has changed the way individuals can be targeted, and we actually see that there is a digital version to trafficking. A lot of times it starts as simple as a young girl being approached on a social media platform by another individual, and maybe that individual simply says, "Oh, let's get to know each other." They strike up a conversation, and that person who is intending to lead the one who's being targeted into that, they're going to build a relationship. They're going to get to know that person, and then they're eventually going to do an ask in the way of, "Would you send me some photos of yourself? Would you be willing to do this online with me?" So social media has also now become a way that traffickers can target their victims, get to know their victims. And unfortunately, while social media can be used in really great ways, it has also, one of the negative ways it gets used is that it's made it almost safer for traffickers to target individuals and has almost given them a way to stay anonymous as they target individuals. So when we talk about who's targeted, we also have a social media piece that can play into how traffickers are targeting individuals. But then we have the piece of actually people who are planning to target someone. Again, they know who to look for. They know the kind of situations, life circumstances that they're wanting to find an individual. So to just put a little bit more definition to that, as we look back at our information here in our Google sheet, we see who is a target. And I love our country and our Department of Justice definition there, because it says there is no single profile of a trafficking victim. And that is absolutely true. Like, we, at least in my line of work, we have seen trafficking victims here in the US from all different backgrounds, all different races, all different cultures, all different just places of social hierarchy in different states. It really can just range. It's not like we can pinpoint like it's really worse right here in this state at this city because of A, B, and C. You do find that those being targeted, they come from all different backgrounds. With that also said, how those individuals, once they are targeted, how they're transported, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, transportation lines or trafficking lines for individuals who are being trafficked, that does get a little more specific. But as we talk about who is targeted, there's no single profile of a trafficking victim. Victims of human trafficking can be anyone, regardless of race, color, national origin, disability, religion, age, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity. There's really no single profile. Anybody can be targeted. And that's what's a little alarming too, because it's also harder to educate and think about, how do we keep people safe from this? How do we keep individuals who are at risk of being targeted for being trafficked? How do we keep them safe? And one of the ways we keep everybody safe is when we're all educated about it, when we all know what human trafficking is, how it works, what it looks like, the more we all get to be on the lookout for it, and the more we all can speak into making sure that people stay safe, and we can recognize when someone might be in a situation where they are being targeted. And so again, as you guys have questions, even talking about how do we recognize if someone's being targeted, feel free to toss those in the chat, and we'll definitely get to those here at the end of this. So popping down again, still staying under that who is targeting. I love our Department of Justice definition. It goes on quickly, and I won't go through all that, but it says, although there is no defining characteristic that all human trafficking victims share, traffickers around the world frequently prey on, and we just talked about this, individuals who are poor, vulnerable, living in an unsafe or unsustainable situation, or are in search of a better life. And so a lot of times I get asked a lot of questions about that, like, wait, in search of a better life, what does that mean? And so we have found that young girls and young boys, but oftentimes young girls, find themselves in a living condition where they're either running away from home, they want to run away from home, they're actively seeking a better place to live. And what that does is, when they don't have a community around them that can support them and love them and help them work through that, you find young adults who are seeking a way out, a better living situation, what they have, and they are very open to whatever the next opportunity or option is. And at that point, a trafficker sees the open door to be like, well, let me tell you a better opportunity. And traffickers or individuals meaning to do harm take that opportunity to step in and say, well, I've actually got this place you can stay, or, oh, why don't you come stay with me? Or, oh, I know this hotel down the road and I can get you a couple free nights there. And a lot of times those individuals, they're so needing to change their way they're currently living, finding a better place, finding a better option, that they say yes, because someone's actually being nice to them and helping them step out of the current situation they're in. And then what they find is that person wasn't really being so nice. And they flip it around and they're like, well, to pay for staying with me, or to pay me for all the food that I've been allowing you to use and staying in this place, or to pay for the rooms I gave you that night, here is what I need you to do for me. And that's when the force, the coercion, the fraud starts to step in. And what we also find too is that individuals who are at risk, they don't know what to do. They were already in a desperate place. Now they're in even more desperate place. And you've got someone saying, I'll take care of you. I'll give you a room and a place to stay. I just need you to do this for me. And right then that it just gets that switch gets flipped. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, so you're saying I can stay safe if I do this for you, but at least I've got food and you're going to give me shelter and clothes? And so again, it makes an easy move into, okay, this person's promising me shelter, food, safety if I just do this these few times. Okay, I'll just do it these few times, and then I'll be all right. Well, it doesn't end up being a few times. It ends up often being a lifetime or a cycle that doesn't get broken until someone steps in to stop it. And so it's just as easy as that sometimes. And so a lot of times we do get asked about that part of the definition. So popping back down there real quick under who is a target, that second highlighted area, we just shared trafficking victims are deceived by false promises of love, a good job, a stable life. They're lured in or they're forced into situations where they're made to work under harsh conditions with little or no pay. And so I do want to pop back over real quick because as we talk about human trafficking, I just shared about how someone steps into that sexual exploitation, performing something against their will. You also have many scenarios right now where we have individuals that are promised a better life, they're promised pay, and whether they just come into our country or they're moving to a different state, they find themselves in a similar situation where they are being forced to labor for absolutely no pay or very little pay at all, if maybe even that little pay gets to go back to them. So forced labor can be a similar situation as sexual exploitation can be. And again, you've got people looking for a better life, a way out, hopefully a change in their environment. And traffickers are ready, they are looking, they are targeting, they know the signs of who they want to approach. And so they will just go in and make those false promises. And then unfortunately, individuals find themselves in really worse situations than maybe they were before. And so let's pop back over there really quick. In the United States, trafficking victims can be American or foreign citizens. So just to go ahead and step a little into what global trafficking looks like. Again, we have situations where human trafficking has actually been around for a very, very long time. We are now at a part in our history where we, especially here in the US, are becoming more aware of it. You may have heard of campaigns like A21, Free the Slaves, Doll Up Freedom Network, Dignity Freedom Network. We have orgs that are rising up and realizing that here in our country today, we not only have individuals coming from other countries into our country that are being forced to labor or being sexually exploited. We have our own individuals in our country now, US citizens, who are also being forced into this way of life. And so we've got two dynamics happening. We have individuals being trafficked from other countries into our country, and we have US citizens who are being trafficked around and inside our country for labor and sexual exploitation. Now, we're going to keep it super simple and light here today, but I do want to take a moment to say that this is where human trafficking can get very layered, because when you start talking about individuals being trafficked into our country, US citizens being trafficked, you find that a lot of times these dynamics are happening around other things like illegal gun trades, illegal drug use, situations with gangs. It starts to even play into the economy. So here is where trafficking can get very layered. And if it's a career path that you are pursuing, I know I did get to speak to one of the RSU students. It may have been before COVID, and he was going to eventually pursue a path that led him into a career that would allow him to combat trafficking. And so if that is a career path you're thinking of, international affairs, humanitarian org, I do want to encourage you to go ahead and start diving in now to how all those layers affect our world and our country. But today we're gonna keep it just what can we do and how is this affecting us? But I do want to encourage you to dive into those layers if that's something you're interested in. So when we talk global trafficking, human trafficking happens all around the world. For us in the US, when we start to talk global trafficking, we have individuals being trafficked from other countries into our countries across borders. Sometimes they fly in on planes, and I know that can often be another question is, wait, How does someone get a human being from one country into our country illegally? I know when I travel, I have a passport, I have a global entry card, I have a visa. There is so much that it takes to get from our country to another country. How do we get human beings, especially if it's against their will, across one border to another? And there are so many ways that traffickers use, and again, this can get layered, but just to give you a quick snapshot, you could have a trafficker individually transporting another individual, which is harder. That is harder to gauge. It is really hard to gauge a trafficker transporting one individual. There are signs to look for, which is oftentimes that individual with the trafficker is not speaking. Even when spoken to, the trafficker will often speak for that person. Their eyes are down. They are not making eye contact. They do not seem to be relaxed. They're not eating or drinking or receiving anything offered to them. They seem to be very shut down and in a very controlled situation. Those are some signs that you would look for if an individual was being trafficked one-on-one across the border. But then we have other scenarios where we do have groups of individuals that can illegally come across the border, being forced across the border. And that usually is connected with a much larger illegal entity that has been unfortunately working for years to traffic across the border. And again, that gets way more layered in there. But those are two of the ways that we find individuals being trafficked across our borders. It's a one-on-one trafficking, or it can be a small group being trafficked across the border. Here in the US, how does an individual, someone is targeted, how are they trafficked? We talked about social media really quick, that someone can be targeted, asked for pictures, pulled into a relationship, and then the next thing you know, that trafficker is going to use those pictures that was freely given to say, if you don't do what I'm about to ask you to do, I will show these pictures to your mom, to your dad. I'll post them on the internet. Your dad will lose his job. Your mom will lose her job. They will use those photos to coerce and force this individual to do things that they are wanting them to do through fear and promises of retribution. So social media here in our country is a big way that individuals are being trafficked. We also have scenarios where drugs are involved, and maybe a family member is very addicted to illegal drugs, and that family member finds themselves in a position where they are needing to continue getting drugs and can't pay for them. We have had scenarios where that family member would sell a niece or a nephew or a daughter into being used in sexually exploited ways to cover their drug habit. And then you have a cycle that starts for that young individual. And again, that cycle typically will not be broken for that individual until someone steps in to stop that. And then we often find that with those being trafficked into our country and young individuals who are already American citizens being trafficked, that we start talking about moving across state lines, which is where trafficking really began. It's moving from one state line to another state line. And that's where you can find things like Truckers Against Trafficking is an amazing organization that works with truck drivers to actually identify when groups of young individuals are being trafficked through main highways and main venues. You'll also find that as individuals are being trafficked, that there is a specific set that traffickers will take young girls down main highways, and they will intentionally stop at truck stops, and people will know that there are certain truck stops in our country where you can go purchase a young individual. And that gets very scary, and it's sad that that's happening. And some of those truck stops are in our area. But Truckers Against Trafficking has done a great job about bringing awareness to things like that. I would also say that when we start talking about trafficking locally, like, never be afraid. Like, if this is something that you're looking at being educated about and maybe even going into a career path, like, Man, it is great. Our local law enforcement, they are amazing. They are great. If you just have basic questions about how can I be more aware in my city, in my county, in my state, and they are great at answering questions. They have a whole public awareness program that they are wonderful with. So I also want to encourage you to always ask our local law enforcement if you have a question about something or you see something you're not sure about. They are great at answering those kinds of questions. So that's just a little bit about global trafficking. So when we talk global trafficking into our country, plus American citizens who are trafficked within our country. So global trafficking, someone who's trafficked local, it's a little bit, hopefully, a better definition of that. And so we're going to pop down. We're going to kind of just wrap up that global trafficking there. You'll see global trafficking estimated 20 to 40 million individuals trapped in slavery currently today. Those are some of the average numbers between a couple different orgs and even our justice system that tries to evaluate where are people today. Slavery versus human trafficking. That's another thing I get asked when we're just talking, how do we even dip our toe in this? Because of the education and awareness and the global piece, you will see that a lot of times the word human trafficking and slavery are interchangeable in media pieces, online. When you go to start reading information, you will find that slavery and human trafficking are now words that will get swapped for each other and can mean the same thing. So if you're talking human trafficking and someone slips into using the word slavery, just always getting clarity there. Like if we're talking slavery, we're talking sexual exploitation, labor purposes, but someone being forced against their will to do something in an ongoing basis is slavery. And so that's why you'll see those words interchanged a lot. And we do have a large amount of people who are currently in modern day slavery. One of the ways that we gauge this is our country has something called the TIP report. I totally recommend that you take a look at it. It's the Trafficking in Persons report produced by our State Department. Our country does an amazing job of working with other countries to gauge where is everything settling when we talk about human trafficking? What are the numbers? How can we figure those out? How can we help other countries? How can we help ourselves? So it's a very large number, and I know that it seems huge. Unfortunately, those larger numbers are correct. And so it is something that we have to be active about stopping and changing, and we can always start in our country first. So trafficking in our country, trafficking can look different in each state and area. We just briefly talked about that. You could have an area of your state that is very financially well off and doing well and still have trafficking victims coming from that area. You can have a part of the state that maybe is more low income and still have trafficking victims from that area. What changes when we start to talk about specific states and what that looks like is that there are places where traffickers can hide easier than others. A trafficking victim can come from anywhere with any kind of background, as we've already learned. There are places in our state that is easier for a trafficker to hide than other places. And so that's where, when we talk about what trafficking looks like in one state versus another, that's how that gets different. And for example, we have a number of large highways that run through Oklahoma, that run from East Coast to West Coast, but they pass through Oklahoma. A lot of victims that are going across country end up passing through Oklahoma simply because of our road system. And so that's how states, it can look different in some states. For us, a lot of times trafficking victims are only here temporarily and they're moving on. For other states, that is their destination and they are there for a while. And so that's how that can look a little different. And so real quick, I do just want to wrap with who are the traffickers. So our definition here by our Justice Department, Justice, there is no one type of trafficking victim. Perpetrators of this crime also vary. Traffickers can be foreign nationals or U.S. citizens, family members, partners, acquaintances, and strangers. They can act alone or as part of an organized criminal enterprise. People often incorrectly assume that all traffickers are males. However, the United States has processed cases against women traffickers. Traffickers can be pimps, gang members, diplomats, business owners, labor brokers, and farm, factory, and company owners. So when we start talking trafficking, human trafficking really knows no boundaries, no barriers. It can happen anywhere. A trafficker could be anybody. It could be the case I shared with you about a family member who was addicted to drugs and needed to continue getting them. It could be a gang member that has somehow made a good relationship with a business owner, and unfortunately that business owner goes in with that gang member and opens up their business for women to be moved in and out of there or to shelter criminal activity. And so again, it's just being educated on what are the signs, what should we know, and always at the end of the day, we want to be educated, we want to be aware, so that we can contact those who can do something about it, like local law enforcement, local anti-trafficking agencies. So I hope that helps. It's just a quick dipping the toe into what is human trafficking. Anti-trafficking is anything that we do to combat trafficking, to stop trafficking, to stop modern day slavery. And so, Caitlin, I'm going to toss it over to you. I know that was lots of information there. And so again, I just want to encourage you guys, one, just to be aware, hanging out, having conversations, Googling, looking at statistics, especially State Department, Justice Department. Be aware, be educated, especially if you're going to go into this line of work or you think that you want to do something to combat trafficking. Definitely connect with your local law enforcement. We have amazing, just different units, different task units that they do a great job of this, and they'd love to have conversations with you. So, yay.
Thank you so much, Danielle. We do have a couple of questions. Sarah actually has a two-part question. Sarah asks, why is human trafficking an important topic to you? And in what ways have you been able to help victims firsthand?
Yay, oh my gosh, that's like a great question. So Sarah, for me, I did not start out in anti-trafficking. I started out in humanitarian aid, and I was mostly in Asian countries. Specifically, most of the time I was in the country of India, and we originally went there, and with the organization that I worked with, and do I need to stop sharing my screen? Or
no,
should I? I'm good. Okay, great. Sorry. And so I originally went in to help build education and school systems in the poorest of the poor areas of rural India. While there, I just had questions about things and discovered some things, and I started noticing just some ways that young girls were in groups or almost brothels. And that is when my eyes first got open. I knew about human trafficking. I had just never seen it play out. And I saw for the first time what that could look like, how that could affect an individual, and how that can play out. A few more years into that, the organization I was working for, Dalit Freedom Network, they actually branched off and started a social justice department in their org. And part of that was to focus on anti-trafficking. And so I was able to kind of move into that area, and it allowed me the opportunity to work both with our government here in the US and global governments to help combat trafficking, because it truly destroys lives and generations. And it is, I mean, if you think about an estimated 20 to 40 million are in slavery, those are so many lives that are being destroyed. And not just immediately, like when a person is trafficked, it's not an immediate death. It's not like their life is taken immediately. That individual is living out day after day of being forced to do something against their will over and over again. And I just wanted to do the best I could do to help as many people I could and see that hopefully be stopped and come to a point in our global society where we all agree that human trafficking is not okay, and we will do whatever we can to stop it. Yes. Did I miss the last part of that? Did I
No,
cover?
that's great. So I am going to quickly drop a survey link into the comments here on Facebook. Your feedback to us is vitally important as attendees to our events. Your voice helps us decide what type of events to continue to bring to RSU here at the library. So we do have a quick survey, a feedback survey. If you guys would take a moment and fill that out for us, let us know your thoughts on today's event, as well as the type of events you'd like to see us host in the future. And go ahead, and we're still taking questions. So if you have questions, just drop that into the comments as well. Lacey asks, is it true that traffickers tried to remove any identifiable features from their victims?
So it depends. If you've got a situation where a trafficker is targeting maybe a young child at a storefront or a park, or maybe a route that child walks continually, and they have a plan to abduct this individual right out of a known area, they could cut their hair, dye it, change their clothes quickly, put a ball cap on them, smear some mud under their eyes. It's usually something simple like that, like cutting the hair, dyeing it, putting a ball cap on, definitely changing the clothes. Those are some of the easiest and quickest ways that someone could snatch another, I hate to use the word snatch, I'm so sorry, but could take another individual and try to blur their identity enough to get them away without people noticing, hey, that's actually, they belong to me. So
I was kind of curious, you mentioned earlier that a lot of the victims sort of are seeking some sort of a better life, an escape from issues that they're currently living with. What's being done on the front of getting the word out and educating people on resources available to them, legitimate, like government assistance or anything like that, so that they know they can turn to safe places instead of people across social media?
yes. So I think this is where oftentimes you'll hear people say, we have so many organizations trying to help people. Actually, we don't have enough. This is where amazing organizations, local community support comes in, so that organizations, other nonprofits who specifically focus on helping young people who find themselves without food, shelter, resources, or a safe place to stay, those orgs are not only educating the community to say, hey, we're here, so if you know somebody who needs this kind of help, send them our way, but they are also trying to identify young individuals and helping them not get to a point where they're so desperate that they'll take any help, but offering clothing, shelter, food, safety, as they help that young individual think about their next steps. And so I would say definitely look around your local community, even just Googling, like it can be as simple as Googling nonprofits in my area and seeing what they do and becoming aware of how they help people, and knowing who they help. That way, if you find that you are having a conversation with someone who says, I know of an individual who's in a scary situation, you can say, oh my gosh, here's the information I have to this local nonprofit, and they literally exist to help this person who would be in this situation. And so I hope that we get more orgs that can do that. But right now, we've got a few that are doing the best that they can do. So, yeah.
Thank you. Lacey is following up. She's asking, have you heard of the safe places signs that are up at places like Quick Trip and certain locations to try and like help people who may be victims of human traffickings or other crimes. And then I guess I want to tack on a little bit of a follow-up. How effective do you feel those are in these sorts of situations?
So I have heard of those, and I will say I have not directly communicated with that org or how I have seen them. I do know how they work, and I have heard stories about how they have been helpful. I think that any place that we can put information that would be accessible to a victim is the best place to put it. I know that oftentimes we'll find victims are going in and out of places like QT or using the restrooms at a local gas station, or maybe if there's a local fast food place that's near maybe where that victim is staying or is being trafficked, and they can get there to get food and get back. Any place that we can put up information that will allow a victim, because usually that victim is being watched like a hawk, and that victim usually has a schedule. If they don't have a schedule, they have a very clear course of action that they are to take from point A to point B. And if they deviate, it's noticeable. Usually they don't have access to a cell phone. Sometimes maybe, sometimes not. But any place that we can place information that would allow a victim to get connected or find a way out, I think that that's highly important. As effectiveness, I believe any org that has a next step process, that has a plan in place, when you're vetting orgs, and I always encourage people, as you look for a nonprofit to get behind and to partner with, you want to ask questions. You don't want to just be like, oh, you had a great brand or you had a great logo, it's a go. No. Ask questions. Ask them, hey, what is your plan for connecting with victims? Once a victim has connected with you and you've identified them, what is your plan to help them? What is your next step process for them? Ask nonprofits these questions before you decide to totally get on board with them. And so an organization's effectiveness is really dependent on their planning and their ability to carry out that next step for helping that victim.
Excellent information. We have another question. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Risa would like to ask, what would you say are some things that can be worked into our day-to-day activities, if any, that can help protect our communities from trafficking? She adds, for instance, she has 4 young children. What can we teach them to do or say or look for that will keep them protected, and or that they can share with their peers to keep them protected?
That's so good. One of the things that I always toss out to moms that I find important, it doesn't mean that you have to do this, but anytime, just popping over to social media real quick, it's always important to not alert your social media platforms if you and your kids are walking alone somewhere. If we had a situation in Colorado where a mom was updating her Facebook page anytime that she was walking to the corner to watch her daughter walk from the school to the corner of the road where she picked her up. She's like, oh, here waiting today for, and she'd mentioned the name of her child, to watch her walk from school to here. Oh, here at 8 a.m. to watch her walk from the corner to school. And it was super easy for someone to track those movements and to know where this mom was by herself with her kiddos. So I don't want to make social media sound bad, because it's really not. It's us just being aware of what we're putting on there that could alert someone to where we might be or where our kiddos might be at some point by themselves. I always think it's important if your kiddos ever find themselves being followed by a stranger, if they find themselves like they feel like they might be being followed and they're with you, they're not with you. I mean, they should definitely alert you. But if you feel like you're being followed in a store, down a sidewalk, make 2 intentional left turns or right turns or someplace towards safety, toward another individual, maybe that you weren't planning to make. So let's say I'm in Walmart and I'm looking at a frozen turkey, and I go down another aisle, and all of a sudden I realize, man, this person's been with me for like 5 minutes. Let's just make an intentional left turn I wasn't planning to make and go toward customer service. Oh, let me just do a quick right here into the clothing department. Oh, this individual is still with me even now. I'm going to go walk up to someone who works there and let them know. If you're being followed, deviate from what would have been your natural path and see if that's still happening. But again, anytime that you feel insecure or you feel like a stranger has watched you too long and is monitoring how you move through a room, in a parking lot, in an area, you're being followed in a store, those are huge signs. But also for kiddos, if they're on social media, they never want to accept someone they don't know. They never want to be in a chat with someone you don't know. They do not want to be alone in a private chat with someone you don't know. And I would say even maybe a similar situation, never in a place that you can't see them. Yeah, those kind of lead into those situations, and it makes it easy to target somebody. So I think what we really look for is keeping children out of scenarios that make them an easy target. So if we can do things that keep them in areas that keep them from ever being a target, then that's great. Yeah. Did that get that answered good?
I believe so. See, I know there is that little bit of lag to the Facebook connection.
Right.
I'm not seeing any other questions come in though. Is there, oh wait, here we have one more. Lacey asks, do you think apps like Noonlight are useful for these situations? Also, do you believe the password system parents use for picking up their children works well?
I am not familiar with Noonlight at all. I absolutely don't know what that is, so I am so sorry. But it sounds like something I might look into after this, so thanks. But I don't know what that one is. I know that if your kiddo has a cell phone, I know that oftentimes parents will have the tracking feature to track the cell phone to cell phone. And then I'm so sorry. What was the password? Yeah, I think passwords can be great, or safe words. Or I know in my best friend and her family, they have the word bananas. And anytime that the kiddo finds themselves, if they just walk up and say bananas, mom is like, oh, hold on, guys, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That is a word, and the kids know we only use this word when I need to tell you something or I feel like something's up. It allows mom to nicely and easily just extract herself from a conversation real quick and clarify, look around. So I do know that safe words or passwords can be helpful to navigate crowds, or having, maybe if your kiddo is going with grandma or grandpa and we let grandma and grandpa know the safe word or the password, they can be helpful. So sometimes they aren't helpful when all of a sudden even the extended family in North Carolina knows. Maybe time to change that word unless something, but yeah.
Thank you. I'll give one more second here if anybody has any further questions to drop in the comments. I did want to take the opportunity again to say thank you, Danielle, for this amazing presentation and information. And then if anybody has any further questions that they'd like to follow up with you, is there a best place that they can contact you at?
Yes, I would happily just give you my email if that's okay. It's just my name, Danielle Sisk, and then .n is in Nicole, @gmail.com.
All right, thank you so much. And then, yeah, everybody out there, if you are watching the replay of this, take a minute, fill out that survey, follow up with Danielle if you have any other questions, and have a wonderful day.
Yay, thanks, guys.